If you're a gamer familiar with any history of video games, then you're probably aware of the video game crash that occurred in the United States in 1983. And you're probably aware that Nintendo was able to revitalize that video game market with a Trojan horse known as the Robotic Operating Buddy, or R.O.B for short. Despite R.O.B's popularity among the gaming community, everyone who's casually aware of Nintendo and NES always say the same thing when they see my R.O.B. Wait, Nintendo made a robot? Welcome to Retronomics, the series that evaluates price trends of video games, and today we're taking a look at Nintendo's Robotic Operating Buddy. Now, usually I cover entire systems, but I wanted to focus on specific items as well. I'll go into the history, features, and go over the price trends to see if buying a R.O.B is worth it today, or if prices will go down in the future. R.O.B was unveiled to buyers of video games at the Summer Consumer Electronics Show in Chicago in June of 1985. The reception of R.O.B was pretty positive, however, no distributors would sign up to sell Nintendo systems in their stores. Nintendo instead went directly to retailers and offered to set up and market the console for the retailers. And in October of 1985, the Nintendo Entertainment System Deluxe set would go on sale in New York and LA, then nationwide in 1986, with R.O.B as the selling point. R.O.B added polish to an already futuristic design of the NES. Robots were very cool by the time R.O.B hit the market. Transformers came out in September of 1984, Rocky IV in 1985 had a robot butler, and Short Circuit would come out in 1986, so the idea of having a functional, affordable robot in your house was the pinnacle of being a kid in the mid-1980s. The deluxe set included R.O.B, a control deck, 2 controllers, a zapper, and 2 games, Duck Hunt and Gyromite. The set also included the accessories necessary to play Gyromite. Despite R.O.B's flashy appeal, he would be overshadowed by a more popular Super Mario Bros. That was released in 1986, and people would buy the standalone control deck with Super Mario Bros. Instead of a more expensive R.O.B Deluxe set. Although R.O.B was sold individually, eventually R.O.B was discontinued with only 2 compatible games, Gyromite and Stack Up. R.O.B is made to match the NES that he was bundled with, space gray with a glossy finish. The name Robotic Operating Buddy proudly displayed on the base in Nintendo red. R.O.B is powered by 4 AA batteries and has 2 arms that can open and close, and both move up and down his body or turn side to side. Inside R.O.B is a series of plastic gears that can move R.O.B to his desired positions. The gears are the same that you would find in an old wind-up toy, and just like those toys, R.O.B is incredibly loud. My R.O.B didn't work originally, and it turns out that those gears come loose over the years. A little bit of glue helped R.O.B return to his former glory. R.O.B works the same way that an NES Zapper works, by reading flashes on the screen. Once R.O.B reads a command, he performs it very slowly. He can only read one command at a time and cannot read another one until that command is completed, which means that R.O.B is excruciatingly cumbersome and slow. Especially if you choose the wrong command. Playing with R.O.B for 5 minutes shows you exactly why they chose to discontinue the toy in the first place. For being a buddy, R.O.B is only compatible with 2 games in the NES library, Gyromite and Stack Up. Each game requires unique accessories for R.O.B to function correctly. Gyromite is the most common set as it was included with the deluxe set. The Gyromite set includes 2 weighted gyros, a controller holster with 2 plungers, and a battery-operated spinner for the gyros. There are also a set of claws for R.O.B to use to grasp those gyros. The game is pretty straightforward. You control the professor and then R.O.B operates the red and blue gates by dropping gyros on the respective plungers. R.O.B must first take the gyro, then bring it to the spinner. Once the gyro is spinning, then R.O.B will pick it up and bring it to the plunger. And if you're really good with the R.O.B, you can pick up the gyro while it's still spinning and then return it back to its holder. Rinse and repeat until the level is completed. Oh, and while R.O.B is doing his thing, the game is still running, meaning that on top of waiting for R.O.B, you also have to time it in such a way to avoid enemies and not get squished by a gate in the process. Gyromite is crazy tedious and frustrating with R.O.B, and since R.O.B really isn't necessary for Gyromite, you can simply give the second controller to a real person, or if you still don't have friends, just press A and B with your free hand. Gyromite and its required pieces are the easiest to find because of the deluxe set. It was sold on its own, and a complete inbox version with all of the pieces is one of the rarest NES games available. The last one sold on eBay in November of 2018. But the most expensive of the two R.O.B games is Stack Up, and Stack Up is a game where you stack blocks with R.O.B. There really isn't much of a game so much as a technical proof of concept for R.O.B itself, and the game can't really tell if you stack the blocks correctly, so it's up to you to keep your honor. A North American stack-up game isn't too hard to find, but finding the blocks to use will cost you a pretty penny, and even then you'll want to keep an eye out for misrepresentations. R.O.B didn't sell very well in the United States, but in Japan there are plenty of new old stock available for a fraction of the cost of their US counterparts. For $80 to $100 you can pick up a set of blocks for your R.O.B brand new. Less than ethical sellers know this and sell the blocks as US versions along with the game for a huge markup. And there are cosmetic differences to help you out. The biggest standout is the claws. The Famicom version of the robot is colored like the Famicom, and so his claws are red. R.O.B.'s are gray. Also, the trays that the blocks sit on are gray in the NES version and white in the Famicom version, so I strongly suggest that you import instead of hunting down a US set and potentially buying a Japanese set from a less than reputable seller. Gyromite and Stack Up are staying pretty consistent in price complete, but the loose copies are a different story. Stack Up has almost doubled in value since last year, going from $50 to $100, and this is most likely due to the interest in black box NES games as of late. Stack Up isn't necessarily common due to the lack of interest in R.O.B after launch, but I'm surprised to see a surge in price. I expect the price to drop a bit this year once the vintage graded Gold Rush moves to another system. Gyromite is unfazed by this gold rush, however, and you can expect to pay anywhere from $5 to $8 for it. The game doesn't come with any gyros, of course, but if you find a R.O.B with the gyros and no game, it shouldn't be too hard to track down. But a R.O.B, well, that varies. A working R.O.B the robot with no accessories can cost anywhere from $75 to $125 depending on the condition. It would be better to spend the extra $30 to $50 to get the Gyromite accessories, so that way you can at least play with them for a bit. The bundles are much more affordable than piecing them out too. R.O.B.'s prices have fallen quite a bit since he was first featured in Super Smash Bros. People were snatching him up just to have on their shelf, and a broken R.O.B was going for $150 or more. But I'm glad to see that the price has gone down a bit, and it's not that much more than what I paid for him almost 10 years ago. Expect to see R.O.B remain the same price for a while, at least until parts start to break down, but 3D printers are starting to fill a demand. R.O.B the Robot is an absolute gimmick and by no means a good product. R.O.B is slow, consumes a ton of batteries, and is just plain loud. There are only 2 games available, and while those games utilize R.O.B's features very well, R.O.B is still very limited. Worst of all, if you don't have a CRT television, then R.O.B is completely useless, unless you happen to have one of these. And these are goggles made by Croxel, and these are actually pretty awesome. I paid $50 for them, and what they are is a low-powered Bluetooth device that sends commands to R.O.B, allowing you to control R.O.B with your phone. That's right, since R.O.B doesn't really plug into the NES, he can be used by anything that can communicate with him. So these goggles easily fit on top of R.O.B without any permanent fixtures, which means that if you want to use him with the NES, you can just take them off and R.O.B is back to factory condition. The goggles are crazy easy to use too. Just download the application, turn on the board, and put them on R.O.B and you're ready to send R.O.B commands. The coolest part of these goggles is that they glow while the commands are performing. The only thing that I don't like about these goggles is that the app is iOS exclusive, so if you're an Android user like I am, you'll need an iPad or iPhone from a friend to take advantage of this device. I'll leave a link in the description below if you're interested in purchasing a pair for yourself, because it definitely gives R.O.B an extra lease on life. And even without the goggles, R.O.B is such a collector's piece that if you enjoy the NES, you should consider adding him to your collection. Just accept that he'll be more of a shelf piece that draws people unfamiliar with the NES in. Telling people about R.O.B is one of my favorite parts of my collection. He's relatively unknown to the general public, and people are generally fascinated to hear about the ill-fated robot from the 1980s. And that concludes this episode of Retronomics on R.O.B the Robot for the NES. What did you think? Would you want a R.O.B in your collection, or do you have one already? Let me know in the comments below, and also let me know what topics you'd like me to cover next. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share with somebody who might find it interesting. It really helps the video find a new audience. If you're new here, I have plenty of other Retronomic episodes for you to enjoy, including how Metal Jesus Rocks affects retro video game prices, and how the Atari Lynx prices trend over time. In addition to Retronomics, I have other gaming topics, from game collecting to essays on events in gaming history, like the time that Roger Ebert said that video games could never be art. So if that's something that you're interested in, consider subscribing for future content. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Super Nicktendo, and I'll see you next time.